My guest this week on the show is Sten Morgan. Sten is a certified financial planner and founder of Elite Advisor Network, where he teaches foundational elements that helps advisors become elite. We're going to talk today about Sten's work within the Elite Advisor Network and lessons he's learned from being in the business for so many years. I'm Paul Blanco, and this is Small Steps, Big Wins. All right. Well, Sten, welcome to Small Steps, Big Wins. I'm so glad to have you here. I know we got a chance to catch up a week or so ago on your podcast, but dude, it's been a long time and you're crushing it in the business. So I'm really happy to have you on the show today.
Thanks, brother. Yeah, too long. It's wild how fast time flies. And I was a starry-eyed young advisor going on some trips. And first time I met you, I was like, man, that guy's a baller. I want to be like him someday. So
thanks. You are, and you're killing it. So I'm really happy for you to share with everybody today on the show. So guys, if you're driving today, when you're listening to this, when you get home, make sure you stop because there's going to be a lot of great pieces here for you to take into your practices. So Let's just, I always like to start from the beginning. How did you get in the business and why did you get into this business?
Whenever I get this question, there was a time where I wished I had this really intentional answer. I always knew what I wanted to do, or I had this path laid in front of me and it was I knew what it meant to be a financial advisor, but that is not my answer. And so I was looking for internships in my junior year of college. And I found an internship, and it was the only internship that was going to pay me $100 a week to show up. And it was a Northwestern Mutual internship. And I didn't really know what they did, what they sold. But I was like, I can show up to a meeting once a week and make $100. And so, I started showing up at those meetings, quickly realized I had to call all my friends and family and try to sell them something I didn't really fully understand yet. And that was it. That was the first step in the business. So.
Oh, that's amazing. And hey, and listen, to your credit, at least you took a shot and then you got some passion about the business and now you've been in the business now. How many years now?
So I'm 37. So 14, going on 15 years.
Yeah. 14, 15 years. So, and you've created such a great business. And let's start. I know that, I love this about people like yourself that you really did well really quick in your career. And now you're sharing that with lots of other people through your coaching program. But you wrote a book back. You told me earlier that you wrote it when you were probably about 10 years ago. And it was called 7 Mindsets of Success, What You Really Need to Do to Achieve Rapid Top Level Success. And that's the key to this business. And I think that what people don't realize is that your mindset is probably 70, 80% of the battle. The rest of the stuff comes with that. So number one, what made you write it? And then let's talk about the book. And I want you to share with all the listeners some of the things that you did that you actually put in there.
So my story is, I had a single mom, 3 sisters and me. And I spent a lot of time in kind of a scarcity mindset. And I never thought I'd run a business, own a business. That just isn't what people like us did. So I thought I'd get into the finance business, kind of climb a ladder. I knew I could work hard, but if I would have known up front what this business was going to be, I probably wouldn't have gotten into it, which is kind of a double-edged sword. Because one, there was so much frustration and limiting beliefs and doubt because I didn't know what the path was. It was like, hey, join this business, call a bunch of people, sell a bunch of stuff that you kind of understand. And then over time, you'll eventually get better at it and it'll work out. And maybe in 10 years or so, you'll be successful. And I was like, okay, that's not very inspiring. That just sounds like the worst sales pitch ever for a career. But the head trash I brought with me into the industry was a huge obstacle. I think out of necessity, I had to overcome. There really was no plan B. And so I fumbled around kind of bumping into things, which part of my story would meant jumping between firms. And I look back to some of my leaders and I know now because I lead advisors and I run into young advisors at times that I'm like, I wish I could explain to you what you need to know, but you're not ready to listen. And I was that young advisor. I was probably so frustrating to lead because I always wanted to kind of push the envelope a little bit with creative ideas and I wanted to write books and do things. And so without a path and with some desperation, I kind of bounced around trying to make progress as quick as I could. And luckily, just through some grit, and it is true that numbers do help you be successful. If you call enough people, meet enough people, like it will eventually work out.
Yep.
But when I got to 28 and I was one of the, I think the youngest chairman's council member ever. I mean, I was going on trips with you guys around the world, which was such a cool benefit.
Yes.
I started getting calls from people in other firms saying like, okay, it's unusual that you've done it this fast, especially because you're in Nashville and you didn't grow up there. And so that sparked the book where I was like, okay, if I could talk to my younger self, what would be the things I would want to share? Knowing, hey, you probably don't have a lot of clarity on what this job is yet. You might just be copying people around you, and most advisors don't make it. So that's not a good system if you just hopefully are around successful advisors, because most people don't get lucky in that way. And so the book was me saying, what are the things that I'm learning about myself, some of which I haven't solved yet, that are kind of foundational to be successful. And so the book process was really cool because I had to look inward and kind of be honest with myself, like, hey, Sten, a few of these things you are a beginner on, but they're part of the reason you've compressed the learning curve, and you're doing in 5-6 years what most advisors take 15-20 years to do. So that was the heart around the first book, was like, man, if I could share this with somebody else and help avoid some of the frustration, then I wanted to do it.
So give me a couple of things that were like, when you were looking inward, what was some of those things that, and I love what you, some of the things that you said, but I also love what you talked about, how you grew up with this scarcity mentality and you brought sort of that head trash into the business, right? And someone didn't get under that quick enough to help you through it. So you had to, bang your head around to figure that out. But what was some of the things that, as you look, that you shared? There's a lot of new advisors, and, I'm on a mission to bring more new advisors into the business. That was always our model here, right? We had a combination of experience. I think of it almost like as a good sports team. We brought in great free agents that helped the culture get even better and grow faster. But a lot of the people came up through the farm system, and there's a stat that there's only 9% of advisors under the age of 30, which is really, sad for this industry, because where is the industry going? But if we're helping those people, because, you were 28 when you wrote it, but you came in when you were, say, 22, what was some of the things you learned? What was some of those things when you looked inward that you learned?
So I think when you get into the business, at least what I've perceived is most advisors don't know enough to discern, am I going into a good environment? It's these people offer me a job and it seems good, so I'm going to try it out. I unfortunately did not find myself, let's just say, on a great sports team where I had a great culture, a great coach. Everybody was showing up to practice early. And so if you end up in an environment like that, which is your firm, if I lucked into your firm right away, I would have been successful even faster. I happened to bounce around between firms where I just noticed what was missing. And I realized, I looked around me and I was like, I don't want to be like anybody here. So I have to, it kind of forced me to look inward quicker than I probably would have on my own. Less so because of what was working, more so like, hey, none of this is working. And so for me, a big one for me was pursue discomfort. And that's one of the chapters in the Mindsets book. Because with my story, the whole goal growing up with my mom and sisters was to try to get comfortable as quick as possible. Like if I can go to the grocery store someday and not be stressed out, that's a win. If I can someday make enough money to where like bills are paid and we have like a little bit of money in the bank, that's a win. So the lens I brought to the business was like, I'm thinking small. It's bigger than I ever thought, but I had no context for like, wait, advisors could make millions of dollars like that. It didn't even compute based on my story. And so learning I had to kind of shake like, Sten, the whole goal is comfort, to actually get to a place where it's like, no, I have to willingly accept and pursue challenging things every day. And for my story, that was an obstacle, because I'd trained myself as a kid to be like, discomfort is bad. Like that means you need to get away from that thing. But in this business, like you have to learn to live with it, be friends with it every single day. So that was a big one.
I love that. And you're right. You labeled yourself and you didn't want to grow through that. And, what's the saying? You have to get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Oh yeah.
That's how you grow. But, let's talk about one other thing that you said earlier, like the law of large numbers, and that's an interesting one when you think about it, right? Because you came in and they told you there was a success formula that if you make enough calls, you see enough people, you'll have enough sales, right? And I remember that very frequently, hearing that. But talk about what you said earlier. You said that actually works if you did it, but it's you have to be uncomfortable to do that too, right?
Yeah, for me, it was also, again, a really uninspiring sales pitch for the business. And I relate it to, if you played baseball and you were batting 100, the solution shouldn't be just get a lot more plate appearances. Like, hopefully a good coach would say, hey, let's get you to hit 300.
Yeah, or not even let you play.
Yeah, or at some point it's like, yeah, maybe there's something else for you. And so for me, and this is what, our newer book that I just released, Value First Prospecting, is essentially my reflection and me packaging the model I've built over the last 12 years to say, hey, there's a better way. Like, there's the average way, which is what the industry kind of teaches, which I think is better than nothing. But if you think about the stats on advisors and some of the stats you shared, like young advisors aren't really in the business, most of them aren't making it. As I've kind of finally settled myself in the business, I look back and I'm like, man, it's kind of a bloodbath. Like, can we all just look at each other and agree, like, that's just not working very well?
There's got to be a better way.
There's got to be a better way. And so when we, have something like a 80, 90% close rate, when we get a client in a meeting room, I'm like, that may not be everybody's close rate, but it doesn't have to be 10%.
Cool.
And so kind of a key part of my team and the coaching we do is like, let's recognize average and reject it and be open to a different path. And as I look back, if somebody gave me that message at 22 or 23, that would have been more inspiring. And so we're trying to present it in a different way. One, to get more people in the business. And two, for the people who maybe got comfortable, kind of the curse of comfort. There's so many advisors in that spot where they're just like, I'm doing okay. If the reason you get out of bed every day is just to make enough money for yourself, evaluate that. Because like that's not that motivating. But if it's your full potential, if it's to grow a team, if it's to leave a legacy, like those things will motivate you beyond I'm making enough money to pay my bills and go on a couple trips a year. And those are the advisors we're trying to hang out with.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. What's the formula? What did you do differently to get where you are now, and talk about that 12-year journey?
A lot of it was kind of desperation. It was helpful to meet a lot of advisors as I was becoming successful and getting to hang out with advisors that were, their practices intimidated me, even though people were telling me I kind of figured it out at a young age. But the good news is there's a lot of different types of advisors out there. So I don't care where you came from, how you dress, like those things, come up with your own philosophy around success, but there are like some core things. And most of those advisors that we were going on trips together with have an abundance mindset. They were sharing their best ideas with each other, but they were also master communicators. And I think something where our industry falls short is we're doing like, hey, learn this product, learn this illustration. But if I can put a prospect in a room with you, are you able to inspire them? Like, do they leave that room thinking, I've never had a meeting like that before? And so like a third of the teaching we do in our lead advisor network is like, I'm going to teach you how to speak to somebody in a way that creates urgency. Because I spent years with a whole file of prospects that never took action. They'd come to my lunches. They'd call me with one-off questions. And finally, I had to take ownership and say, the reason they're not saying yes is because of me. Like I'm not doing something I need to, because I either need to disqualify them faster or qualify them and get them to take action. And so for me, my journey was a lot of, am I getting the right people? And this is why we talk a lot about prospecting. This will forever be something we all need to get better at. How do I get more plate appearances with the right people? But then when I get that plate appearance, like, am I delivering in a unique way? Am I meeting their expectation? And for everybody listening, just know the expectation when somebody comes into your office is low. Like, they're not expecting a dynamic experience with a financial advisor. They're expecting to hear about some product, answer some questions, give you some details, and then you give them one or two things they should probably buy to fix their problem. That's unfortunate in some contexts, but it's good for the advisors that lean in, because they're like, you can easily 10x that in their mind and blow them away. You just have to know how to do it. And so there's the practical side of how are you getting in front of the right people. We call that targeting strategies. And the idea of value first prospecting is, if I cold call Paul and I say, hey, Paul, I'm Sten, I'm a financial advisor. Can I get with you next week? You would be like, why are you calling me? Like, do you know how busy I am? Like, do you know how valuable my time is? You're thinking that, probably wouldn't say it, but that's most people. Like, why are you asking for my most precious asset? But if I called Paul and said, hey, Paul, I'm friends with one of your buddies. I have this strategy that saved him $50,000 when it came to his real estate. And he said, you might be interested. Can I get 15 minutes with you next week? All of a sudden, I just quantified the potential value of you giving me time. The chances of you saying yes to that are way higher than this general reach out. And so the book is full of these, it's a system from start to finish of us saying, here's how you increase your probability of success way higher than what we call the average path.
It's interesting as you're saying all this, and you talked about the meeting and spending, just call it 50 minutes or an hour with the prospect and what their expectation is. It keeps bringing me back to fitness and working out. Like one of the things I always say to myself, and I try to teach this to people when they're, and like, I love working out in the gym. If I'm going to put an hour in, I have a choice. Is it going to be the best hour, or is it just going to be an okay hour? So it's almost, I'm stealing what you just said, because advisors now have a choice, right? In that hour, are they going to just check the box and say, I got my meeting and I delivered and maybe did make a sale and get a client to take action, but did I give them the best? Did I do the best I possibly could in that hour? And that's really what you're teaching here.
Yep. But I also find that, and we use this a lot, this average versus elite spectrum. So if you imagine average is here, elite is over here, and most advisors don't really know where they stand. So if I said, what is your financial planning deliverable, average to elite? You'd be like, I think it's good, because you have really no context for what's out there. When it comes to how you present in a room, where would you rank yourself? 1 to 10, average versus elite. It doesn't really matter where we are now. The goal should be is to iterate as much as possible to kind of push yourself up the spectrum. So our live event, which we have another one in January, people come to my office for 2 days. We hang out. We spend a good portion of that whiteboarding and communicating to show you, like, when you have a meeting with a client, what makes it feel different? Like, how do you blow them away? And I've had advisors from Merrill Lynch, Raymond James, Mass Mutual, and these are people making, high 6 figures income, to where by most measures, you'd say they're a successful advisor. But I put them on a whiteboard and I tell them to explain something simple to me, like 3 buckets, or, the difference between the Roth IRA and a separate, whatever it is, and they freeze. Because if you can push an illustration across and the person coming to your office is going to do something anyways, eventually you'll get enough clients and you'll be successful. I would rather match the person that could do it faster, meaning we shouldn't brag that we work 15, 20-hour days. That's not the person I want to be. If you can make as much as me and work half as amount of time as me, like, now I'm interested. And so when it comes to, like, every advisor should have a superpower of communication. And we spend a lot of time on that with advisors, because you need to take something complex, communicate in such a way that's personal, and then quantify it so the person realizes, is this a small problem or is this a big problem? And unfortunately, in my journey of being all over the industry, I have yet to see great, consistent teaching on that part of our business.
I love it. And, I want to talk about the Elite Advisor Network more, but when you look at your practice, keep me honest on this one, but it's financial planning based, it's wealth management, it's, all the wealth management products, and then a lot of protection products. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah. So primarily we're planning first with AUM, because my background at Raymond James, like, we just managed money. So that's kind of in me. But even before that, Northwestern Mutual is where I started, like, that's also in me. But when I moved to Nashville, and especially as a young advisor, and this is something, we have firms all over the country that send us their young advisors, because as soon as possible, you need to realize that your time and ideas have value. Like, the products are tools, but imagine, and I look back in time and I feel it in my gut when I'm like, imagine if I would have known I could charge for a plan. Like, even if they didn't buy anything yet, I could still get paid for adding value. Like, that would have changed my entry into the business. And so when we start with a plan, the person paying you for it, it means they're invested. And you guys do this really well at your firm. But we also are able to say, hey, we're really good at managing money, and we have data to support that. And then when we want to, if the insurance opportunity presents itself and we feel really equipped to do it, I'm not trying to help people with $50 term policies. Like, we'll refer that out. But if it's a complicated estate insurance policy, we'll jump in and do that really well. But for me, it was really helpful being in a cold market to say, I bet I can get out there, and instead of having people fire their other advisors in my first meeting in order to make revenue, what if I went with new ideas and gave them a totally different experience? They paid me for it. And I bet when I'm ready, I'll get the assets or the insurance too. And sure enough, it happens 90% of the time, because they see you as a different type of advisor that led with, what we call value first, like good ideas and guidance and coaching. And then the investments in insurance fall in your lap if you want it. So I had to kind of become that type of advisor, which was hard for me because it pretty much said, Sten, you need to reject what you've learned. It's not about the product anymore, because that's the way I was trained. And the first time I heard an advisor talk about financial planning, like I got angry, because if I agreed with what he was saying, that people were willing to pay for this, I'm almost discounting everything I've learned already and all the time I've put in. And so we meet a lot of advisors that are like, no, you're supposed to give that away for free. Like, you're double dipping. It's like, not at all. You're double dipping if you're not giving them something different. Like, if I'm charging you just to roll your money over and then getting paid on that, yeah, then you're maybe double dipping. But I'm giving you this great experience. And whether you pay me or not, or buy any investments or insurance, I'm profitable and you're happy. I mean, to me, that's the future of the business.
Yeah. And I think what happens to advisors is, you're right, though, back to your earlier statement about scarcity and the head trash part that I said, there's a lot of head trash around this, right? What if, do I get into an adversarial position with the client if they say no to me and they have these needs? What do? I can't negotiate the fee, right? So instead, I think there's a fear of saying, all right, I have a great client here. They are going to give me their assets. So how do you teach around something like that? I'm sure you heard that a million times from the people.
All the time. Yeah. And what I'm thankful for is that I had the same head trash. So like, I relate to it. And so I'd first say, I get it, but I can also say, hey, now I've been doing this financial planning really intentionally for 5 or 6 years, and it's a lie. If you are giving them the same thing, that's usually when advisors give that objection. It's because they think about charging for what they're still doing. And I'm like, no, you have to do something different. If you can deliver a totally different experience and do a 3 to 6 to 12 month engagement with true financial planning, and you position it well and you deliver on what you positioned, the client is totally happy to do multiple things with you. And I had the head of Ameriprise, Bill Williams, on my podcast, and they have a lot of data at Ameriprise saying people see those as two different products. Most people see financial planning and asset management as two separate things. I think it's us as advisors that have commingled the two, and it's okay for us to separate it as long as we do it well. And our firm is thrived because of it. When I coach advisors, imagine a pie chart of every potential client you have. Most advisors are going after 10% of those clients. It's the blue ocean. It's blood in the water. It's a red ocean. Yep. Because that 10% of people are people that have money to move now and are willing to, or people that need to buy insurance now or nearly in the future. We're taking 90% of people off the table that aren't quite ready to buy a product or transfer their assets, but they do need everything else we know. So think of people that invest in real estate. Think of business owners. I don't want to be the advisor that meets with a business owner who's making 25 to 30% return on every dollar they put in their business and sit there and argue with him or her that they should put money in a mutual fund. But that was who I was for a while, because that's all I had to offer. Or I'm trying to sell them another insurance policy, and they're like, I've already told you 3 times, that's not important to me right now. If I can get you to pay me a fee, then I don't have to rush that stuff. I'll tell you if it's urgent, but my compensation is not tied to you buying something right away. I just didn't want to have that reputation as an advisor. I wanted to be the idea advisor, the coaching advisor, the encouraging advisor. And most advisors I talk to want to be that. They just feel like they almost can't afford to be. And so with financial planning, if you do it well, we've had advisors that the average financial planning fee across most firms, and we've talked to some of the really big ones, and so these numbers are pretty accurate, is $1,500 to $1,700. The first financial plan I ever sold was $1,500 for a 12-month engagement. Imagine that. As an advisor that had some amount of success, I only thought a year of my time was worth $1,500. And most advisors are charging that. And at that point, you're not profitable. Like, it's still a loss leader and you still need to sell something. So when we coach advisors, I'm saying your financial planning engagement needs to be so profitable and beneficial to the client that if they never buy anything from you, you're still happy. Or a lot of advisors do a $1,500 financial plan, and if the client keeps calling them, they're upset. And I'm like, no, they said yes to your deal. Like, why are you annoyed by the engagement? So yeah, it's been a fun learning curve.
It's amazing. So go back to, have you, I say this pretty much every single show about COVID and how it was so bad, and there's so much good that came of it in our business. Mm-hmm. And like we're interacting today over Zoom. Are you using Zoom as for most of your engagements today? Or are you still seeing clients face to face mostly?
Mine's probably close to half and half to some degree. If my firm would have been ready for growth in COVID, we would have thrived. I know your firm did, but during COVID, I was kind of still the main advice giver. And so I only had so much capacity to take on new people. But we did survey our book of business to say, hey, do you prefer in-person or Zoom or phone call? So that was really good data because we realized maybe only 40% really wanted to meet in person. And so we try to push to Zoom as much as possible. But when it comes to new clients, if I can get somebody in a room with me on a whiteboard, and I'm not going to whiteboard virtually too, I know my close rate is really high. So as of today, we're still pretty centralized in Nashville surrounding, but the opportunity is massive. And I know you guys are tapping into that.
Yeah, it is. And that's kind of where I was asking the question to go to where you just went. When you talked about the whiteboarding and you talked about like the tax control triangle, the buckets, I feel like I'm calling it, for lack of a better name, Zoom face to face, right? Where you now have to, I was a big drawer when I was out in the field, and I know a lot of my advisors are doing that. And I think that a lot of that got lost in this technology world. So I'm curious, are you doing it on your computer? I know it's a little technical, but I just think that it's not going away. You could have a national footprint today, but you have to take it and start to change how we're doing it. So I'm curious, what are you using to do that? Or you just have a board behind you, or are you doing it actually on the computer?
Yep. So you could spend $800, $700 on an iPad and download Notability, which I think is $40 forever or something. And it just links up. You kind of screen mirror, because I like to have it here drawing. It was tough for me to use any kind of mouse. I need to have it kind of right here with me. And I'll go as far as saying you need to whiteboard 2 to 3 things every time you meet with somebody. If you sit at a table and you just pass illustrations or take notes, the energy in that room is going to slowly fall the entire meeting. And at the end, they're going to want to leave. And they could love you and the stuff you're talking about is great, but there's just something about, I need to increase the energy in this engagement frequently. Every time you stop and say, hey, Paul, you're going to love this. Let me show you this thing. And you start drawing it out. It makes it feel like interactive. You ask them a question, you circle something, you highlight it. It should be a requirement that every advisor is a master at whiteboarding. And it's not that you're giving them recommendations, but you're just saying, hey, have you heard of the 3 buckets before? Okay, let's pause real quick. I want to teach you this. Most people, if I just talk to you, we're saying things that make sense to us, but they couldn't even repeat it back to us.
I agree.
But if I whiteboarded 3 circles to you and I put tax deferred, tax free, and taxable, and I wrote a couple examples and I draw arrow, like I bet 20 minutes later they could get up and draw that.
I agree. And my dad told me, I used to challenge him all the isms, right? Like, don't put all your eggs in one basket. And he'd say, hey, those isms are here for a reason. They stood the test of time, right? And there's one that we learned in this business: a picture's worth 1,000 words. And I had one of my top advisors who's like yourself, late 30s, early 40s, present about this time last year to about 30 new advisors. And he got on a whiteboard, and all the stuff that he learned over the last 20 years, he just taught it, and he probably had 10 of those similar buckets and all the stuff you probably are teaching. And I walked away saying, holy mackerel, no one's doing that anymore to the level they should. So what's it called? Notability?
That's the tech that just kind of mirrors. What's cool about Notability is you can preload documents on there, and then you can just highlight over it. And so it's very interactive. People are getting on Zoom expecting to just be spoken at.
I agree.
And so if in there you feel like you're actually prepared, and it'll feel organic, but we teach our advisors this, like practice it ahead of time. Like if there's a specific thing you want to do, we talk a lot about quantifying. So I'd say, hey, Paul, I don't know your numbers yet. This is the first time we met, but let's just assume your tax rate's 25%. You've told me you've never funded a SEP, but based on your income, you could probably fully fund a SEP. And I'm on the whiteboard. I'm not sitting anymore. So all of a sudden they're like, wait, something's happening. Like I didn't expect him to stand up. And I said, let's just imagine you can put $40,000 into a SEP. And I said, let's assume you're 25% tax bracket. Draw a line. This one idea will save you $10,000 this year. Let's just assume we do this for the next 10 years times 10. This one idea is a $100,000 idea. It's going to cost $6,500 to work with me this year. Are you ready to get started? If we don't do that, we're letting them guess on, is this valuable? Is there a return on investment? If we don't quantify, and if you heard, I said, let's assume, I'm not sure yet, but I'm just painting a picture for them to say what's possible. I haven't guaranteed anything. It is up to us to tell that story and then help them put themselves in the story and then put numbers to it whenever we can. So they're like, oh, this is a big deal. I should do that. And so yeah, we spend so much time on that with our advisors because the content you can learn. Advisors are smart people. If someone says yes to a financial plan with me, I get time to go build it and research it. What I need to do in my first meetings with them is inspire them to say, hey, it'll be so costly for you not to take action. We should start this tomorrow. And if you do that, I mean, clients will say things like to you, like, I've never had a meeting like this before. When can we meet again? And for us as advisors, that's gold. It's like we spent years chasing people and fighting for business. And now all of a sudden they're asking when they can get back with us. That's the sweet spot.
It's the word you said earlier, inspired. They left your meeting inspired, and your energy and just your engagement that you have. And I've just spent an hour with you the other day and on the phone, and we spent probably 2 hours together now in the last couple of weeks. And, it's infectious what you're doing, and it's really growing on me. I love it. I'm inspired sitting here. What are some of the other things you teach in the Elite Advisor Network?
People should think that we love our job. Like it shouldn't feel like, are you sure you want to be here? And there's some advisors I've been around where I'm like, I don't know if you really like what you do. And I believe most advisors do, but the skill is tapping into it, where I'm more of like a data-driven stoic person. I've never been the life of the party. I'm not the rainmaker. But because I realize that a lot of times I think I'm the reason people are not taking action, and I'm willing to take that responsibility, there's almost like a moral obligation to tap into that. And while it's uncomfortable at first, like once you get it, to me, it kind of revitalized me for the business. Like I got to where people were saying, hey, you kind of did it. I could have stopped and just kind of got my residual income and been fine. But financial planning and diving into like communication, it just kind of lit a new fire for me. And so it's like, I want every advisor to have this as soon as possible. Your clients enjoy the meetings more. You enjoy them more. They take action faster. Like it's the future elite advisor. I think just a lot of advisors don't know yet that we're allowed to do it or how to do it. And so when we kind of have those light bulb moments with advisors, it's pretty fun. So EAN, when we coach advisors, we don't say, hey, we're the best at everything, but we say, if you want to learn to prospect better, we got you. If you want to learn to financial plan better, which means charge an appropriate fee, have a really good process, learn how to communicate really well, we got you. And then if you want to run a better business, which means, are you hiring the right people? Do you have good KPIs for them? Those are the three pillars we say we can help you become elite at those. And at the end of the day, what we know is accountability in and of itself will make you better. There's a great stat that says your chance of success will increase by 50% if you tell people you have a goal. Your chance of success will increase by 95%. So almost 100% likelihood to succeed if you outsource accountability to a third party, which is essentially like paying a coach. And the best people in any category have coaches. And not all firms have what you guys have, which is like coaching and accountability internally. Most advisors are kind of floating out there, just relying on their own willpower every day. And most of us would fall short if that's the system we have. And so for us, we'll give you accountability on those three areas. And if you can hang in there with us, then you'll start accomplishing things. You're like, I didn't think that was possible. I never thought somebody would pay $10,000 for a financial plan. My top one was $700. Like these are the kind of things. And as soon as you mentioned the other day, the story of the 4-minute mile, as soon as I can get an advisor to experience like a taste of this elite route, getting paid really what they're worth, they're never going to go back. Like you're changed forever as soon as you get a taste of it.
Yeah, it's funny. And it's funny. I was sharing this with my wife yesterday. I listened to a podcast on Saturday about mindset, and he used an example this year in the Olympics. I haven't watched it yet. I'm going to watch it tonight on YouTube. But whoever ran the 1,500 meter race, which is 100 meters short of a mile, the guy that won it did it in 3 minutes and 27 seconds. So, so add 100 meters to that, let's say it would have been 340, just give or take. So he it was the world record, and I can't wait. And I heard he was in third or fourth the whole time and then kicked it at the end. The point of the matter is, you think of, we started, 7 mindsets of success is the name of your book. Well, not only was there a mind that's physical and mental.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I can't wait to watch it because it's so inspiring to hear what you're capable of doing if you set your mindset. So Sten, I'm really impressed with what you're building. You're an elite advisor. You're just getting started. And I think as you continue to double down on the things you're building, you talked about legacy. Well, you're leaving a legacy behind with working with all the people you're coaching in the industry, besides what you're already doing with your clients. I'm really proud of you, and I'm really proud of what you've built. And thank you so much for sharing today. My last question is, what's next?
So I spent about half my time on the legacy side. I love being an advisor, have my clients, and I spent half my time on the coaching side. Those fire me up for different reasons. The reaching the industry side, standing in front of a group of advisors, my peers, I love that. And so the goal, legacy is healthy and great. We're looking to add more advisors there, so it's not just the Sten show. But I'm really fired up about EAN. That's been around for a few years, but there's so much need and opportunity in our business to say we have a few problems: an aging advisor base. So we got to figure out a way to get advisors in that inspire them that this is a great business and get them more successful faster. And then try to get that middle group that's kind of stuck or satisfied to say, wait, there's a better way to do it. I can transition this business. So I see so much opportunity that I'm just going to keep leaning in and coaching, teaching. I love being part of the community because I learn a lot of stuff too. So it can be a lonely business, but a lot less lonely if you have peers that have an abundance mindset. And that's what we're building.
I agree. Well, congratulations on everything. I look forward to more things together. And Sten Morgan, thanks for being on the show. When I think of small steps, big wins, you're killing it, dude. So great work. And make sure you guys go back and listen to this one twice, guys. All right. Everybody have a great day. And thanks again, Sten.
Thanks, brother. Good to see you.
You too. Thank you for listening to Small Steps, Big Wins. Please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
All opinions expressed by the program participants are solely their current opinions and do not reflect the opinions their respective parent companies or affiliates or the companies with which the program participants are affiliated. Investments or strategies mentioned in this program may not be suitable for you, and you should make your own independent decision regarding them. This material does not take into account your particular investment objectives, financial situation, or needs, and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for you. You should strongly consider seeking advice from your own investment advisor. Securities and investment advisory services offered through qualified registered representatives of MML Investor Services, LLC. Member SIPC, 6 Corporate Drive, Shelton, Connecticut, 06484, telephone number 203-513-6000.